The first thing Caleb Vance did was dump a full tray of chili fries into Marcus Hale's lap, right in the middle of Ridgeview High's cafeteria, and the second thing he did was laugh like he had just invented comedy. By the time the plastic fork hit the floor, every table in the room had gone quiet. Not because anybody was shocked. Caleb was being cruel. People expected that from him. But because Marcus did not move the way most kids moved when Caleb Vance picked them as his target. He just looked down at the red chili spreading across his gray hoodie, wiped a little sauce off his wrist, and said, "You know, Caleb, for a guy who gets invited to every party in town, you really work hard for attention." Now, that should have been the end of it. Just one sharp line. One embarrassed football captain, maybe a few kids hiding smiles behind their hands, but Caleb had spent his whole life surrounded by people who treated him like he was untouchable. So being laughed at in public, even quietly, was not something he knew how to survive. Ridgeview High sat on the north side of Belhaven, one of those towns where people like to call themselves close-knit, which usually meant everyone knew your business before you did, and if your parents had money, owned property, coached Little League, or sat on the city council, your mistakes somehow became charming little stories instead of actual consequences. Caleb's father owned Vance Development, the company behind half the new apartment buildings, strip malls, and overpriced coffee shops popping up around Belhaven, and his mother chaired every fundraiser that had a balloon arch and a photographer. So Caleb grew up with a pretty simple understanding of the world. Some people mattered, some people did not, and the people who mattered usually had the last name Vance. Marcus Hale had arrived at Ridgeview 3 weeks earlier, halfway through junior year with one duffel bag, a stack of notebooks, and a habit of keeping his head down when strangers asked questions that were not really questions. His mom, Denise, had taken a job managing the night shift at a long-term care center across town, and Marcus had moved with her from a small place outside Columbus after his grandfather got sick. Nobody at Ridgeview knew that part. Not at first. All they saw was a quiet black kid in thrift store jackets who did not join a club, did not follow the football team around, and did not seem interested in trying to impress anyone. That made him confusing to some people, and confusing people made Caleb nervous. Caleb liked things simple. He liked kids who laughed at his jokes, teachers who gave him the benefit of the doubt, and hallways where everyone stepped aside when he came through. Marcus did none of that. He walked through Ridgeview like he had somewhere to be and did not need anybody's permission to get there. The first time Caleb tried him, it was almost nothing. Just a shoulder check near the science wing. Marcus had been carrying a cardboard model for chemistry, something involving a bridge made of popsicle sticks and duct tape, and Caleb came around the corner with 2 teammates behind him, hit Marcus just hard enough to make the thing tilt, then said, "Watch the traffic, man." His friends laughed. Marcus steadied the model, looked at Caleb for a second, then said, "That bridge has better structure than your personality." One of Caleb's friends, a kid named Trevor, who had been laughing 2 seconds earlier, made a sound like he was trying not to choke on his own gum. Caleb smiled, but there was no humor in it. "You got jokes," he said. Marcus shrugged. "Only when somebody gives me material." That was the moment Caleb decided Marcus was not going to be left alone. It was not really about the joke, not exactly. It was about the fact that Marcus had looked him in the eye without asking if he was allowed to. It was about the fact that Marcus did not sound scared. More than anything, Caleb hated that Marcus did not seem impressed. By Friday, the little stuff had become routine. Someone moved Marcus's backpack from his locker and left it in the boys' bathroom. Someone wrote "Scholarship Boy" on the whiteboard before history class. During gym, one of Caleb's friends asked Marcus if he had ever played a real sport, or if he just ran from trouble. The comments were not always loud enough for a teacher to hear, and that was the trick. Caleb knew exactly how far he could go without leaving bruises or evidence. He liked the gray area. It let him feel powerful while pretending he was only having fun. Marcus did not give him what he wanted. He did not throw punches. He did not make a scene. He did not go running to the principal. At least, not where Caleb could see it. He just started paying attention. He noticed who stood beside Caleb and who only laughed because they were afraid not to. He noticed the way Trevor looked down whenever Caleb pushed things too far. He noticed that Caleb's girlfriend, Sienna Brooks, never laughed at the jokes. Not really, even though she stood there with her arms folded like she had seen it all before. And he noticed one other thing, something Caleb never did. Ridgeview was full of people who wanted to be seen as good people, but when somebody needed them to actually do something good, they suddenly had somewhere else to be. Then came the cafeteria. Marcus had been sitting with Eli Navarro, a sophomore from his media class, a skinny kid with a camera always hanging from his neck, and a nervous habit of talking too fast whenever adults asked him a question. Ellie had been showing Marcus a short video he was editing for the school film club, mostly slow-motion shots of old factories around Belhaven and people walking past the river, and Marcus had actually smiled, the kind of smile that made him look younger than he usually did. Caleb saw that from across the room. He saw Marcus laughing, saw him relaxed, saw him looking like maybe he had found one person at Ridgeview who was not trying to make him feel like he was borrowing space, and something in Caleb tightened. He came over with Trevor and two other guys, grabbed the edge of Marcus's tray, and said, "Look at this." Hale found himself a little fan club. Marcus kept eating. "You should try one sometime," he said. "Might help with your personality." Caleb leaned closer. "You think you're funny because you got one friend?" Eli froze. Marcus looked at Caleb, then at Eli, and said, "No. I think I'm lucky because I got one friend who knows when not to embarrass himself in public." There was a second, maybe less than a second, where Caleb could have walked away. He could have laughed it off. He could have remembered that the whole room was watching. Instead, he flipped the tray. Chili, fries, and a cup of milk went everywhere. Somebody gasped. Somebody else whispered, "Oh, man." Eli stood up so fast his chair scraped across the floor. Marcus stayed seated for a moment, staring down at the mess, and the whole cafeteria seemed to hold its breath. Caleb expected rage. He expected Marcus to shove him, swing at him, do something stupid enough that Caleb could call him aggressive and play victim for the rest of the year. But Marcus just stood up, took off his ruined hoodie, folded it once, calm as anything, and handed it to Eli. Then he looked Caleb square in the face. "You keep doing this because it works," Marcus said, quiet enough that the room had to lean in. "One day you're going to find out what happens when it doesn't." Caleb snorted, but his eyes flickered. "Is that a threat?" Marcus shook his head. "No, that's just math." Then he walked out of the cafeteria with Eli behind him, leaving Caleb standing there in front of 100 people, surrounded by spilled food, fake laughter, and a feeling he had not known in a long time: uncertainty. That night, Marcus got home later than usual because he had stopped by the laundromat to wash his hoodie. The place smelled like detergent, old coins, and somebody's burned popcorn, and his mom was sitting in the plastic chair by the dryers, still wearing her navy scrubs, looking exhausted enough to fall asleep upright. She took one look at the red stain that had not fully come out and said, "Please tell me that was spaghetti." Marcus dropped into the chair beside her. "Chili fries." Denise looked at him for a long second. "School?" Marcus nodded. She did not ask for names right away. She had raised Marcus through enough hard seasons to know that forcing someone to talk was a good way to make them say nothing at all. Instead, she fed quarters into the machine and said, "You want me to tell you what I think?" Marcus gave a tired little laugh. "You usually do anyway." "Fair point," she said. Then she looked at him, soft but serious. "People like that count on you making a choice they can use against you. They want you angry because anger makes them feel right. Do not hand him a version of you he can point at." Marcus leaned back and watched the dryer turn. "So I just let it go?" Denise shook her head. "No, baby. Letting it go and letting it keep happening are not the same thing." Marcus sat with that for a while. Outside, rain tapped against the laundromat windows, and Belhaven looked smeared and gray beneath the streetlights. He thought about Caleb's face in the cafeteria, about Trevor's silence, about Eli pretending he was not scared, about every person who had looked away because looking away was easier than getting involved. Then Marcus pulled out his phone and opened the video folder Eli had shared with him earlier that day. It was supposed to be footage for a film project, but the camera had been recording longer than Eli realized. There, hidden between clips of old brick buildings and riverfront trains, was the cafeteria scene from 10 minutes before the tray flipped. Caleb's voice was clear. The laughter was clear. The moment the tray went over was clear too. Marcus watched it once, then again. He did not smile. He did not text Caleb. He did not call anybody. He simply sent one message to Eli: "Keep every second of that footage. Do not post it yet." A few minutes later, Eli replied, "Why not?" Marcus stared at the screen, then typed back, "Because people like Caleb are not scared of getting caught. They are scared of losing control of the story." And for the first time since he walked into Ridgeview High, Marcus knew exactly what he was going to do next. Monday morning came in cold and gray, the kind of Belhaven morning where everybody looked half awake and the parking lot smelled like wet asphalt, coffee, and somebody burning toast in the teacher lounge. Marcus got to Ridgeview early, partly because he had not slept much and partly because he wanted to see Caleb before Caleb saw him. That might sound petty, and maybe a little bit it was. But after a week of being watched, judged, bumped into, laughed at, and treated like he was supposed to shrink himself down so other people could feel bigger, Marcus wanted one small thing for himself. He wanted to walk into that building without acting like he had done anything wrong. Eli was waiting near the library doors, with his camera bag hanging off one shoulder and a backpack that looked about twice as heavy as it needed to be. He had dark circles under his eyes, too. "I did not post it," Eli said before Marcus could even say good morning. Marcus nodded. "Good." Eli shifted his weight, "But I made copies." Marcus looked at him. "How many?" "3, Eli said. "One on my laptop, one on a drive in my room, and one in a folder that only my cousin knows how to open." Marcus could not help it. He smiled a little. "You think we are taking down the Pentagon?" Eli shrugged. "No, but Trevor is already acting weird, and Caleb looks like the kind of guy who knows how to make a phone disappear." That part was true. Across the hall, Caleb walked in with his football jacket open, his backpack hanging off one shoulder, Trevor and 2 other guys close behind him. Normally, people noticed Caleb the second he entered a room. Heads turned, conversations shifted. Somebody always called his name. But that morning, something had changed. It was subtle, not enough for anyone to admit out loud, but Marcus felt it. People still looked at Caleb, only now they looked away too fast. A few kids whispered. Somebody at the water fountain stopped talking when Caleb passed. Caleb noticed it. Marcus could tell by the way his jaw tightened. He walked straight toward them, slow and deliberate, like he wanted the hallway to belong to him again. "You got something to say, Hill?" Caleb asked. Marcus looked at him calm. "Not before first period. I'm trying to respect the school schedule." Trevor gave a quick laugh, then stopped when Caleb turned his head. Caleb stepped closer. "I heard you have a video." Marcus did not answer. Caleb kept his voice low. "You want to make a big deal out of some lunchroom nonsense, go ahead. But do not act like you are the victim here. You have been running your mouth since you got here." Marcus leaned against the locker beside him. "You dumped food on me in front of a room full of people." Caleb smiled without warmth. "And you are still standing. That is your defense?" Marcus asked. "I did not ruin your whole life. I only humiliated you in public?" Caleb's eyes narrowed. "Watch how you talk to me." Marcus looked past him, at the people pretending not to listen. Then he looked back. "That is the thing, Caleb. I've been watching how you talk to everybody else." For a second, the hallway went almost completely still. Then the bell rang loud and ugly, and the moment broke apart as people rushed to class. Caleb stepped back, but the look on his face said it was not over. Marcus knew it too. He just did not know how far Caleb would go to keep his little kingdom from falling apart. By second period, Marcus had been called to the office. He walked in expecting Principal Harwood, maybe a lecture about keeping things calm, maybe one of those speeches adults gave and they wanted fairness to sound less inconvenient. Instead, he found Assistant Principal Danner sitting behind the desk with her reading glasses low on her nose and a folder open in front of her. Ms. Danner had been at Ridgeview forever. She had the kind of face that made freshmen stop running in the hallway without her having to say a word, and she was known for 2 things: terrible coffee and a memory that made people regret lying to her. "Sit down, Mr. Hale," she said. Marcus sat. She folded her hands. "I heard there was an incident in the cafeteria on Friday." Marcus almost laughed. "Incident is one word for it." Miss Danner sighed. "I have seen the video." Marcus looked up. "Ely showed you. He sent it to me last night," she said, along with a message saying he was afraid the footage would disappear if he waited until morning. Marcus thought about Eli making copies in his bedroom and felt a small twist in his chest. The kid was scared, but he had done it anyway. Ms. Danner tapped the folder. "The video is clear. Caleb Carter dumped your tray on you. There are witnesses. But I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Has this been going on longer than Friday?" Marcus looked down at his hands. It would have been easy to say no. It would have been easy to take the suspension Caleb deserved and move on. But then he pictured the kids who had looked away in the cafeteria, the ones who had probably been through their own version of it, the ones who had learned that keeping quiet was safer. "Yes," Marcus said. "It has been going on since my first week." Ms. Danner nodded slowly. "Can you tell me who else saw it?" Marcus hesitated. "They are scared." "I know," she said, "but I cannot fix what nobody is willing to name." That line stayed with him after he left the office. "I cannot fix what nobody is willing to name." Marcus understood what she meant, but he also understood why people stayed quiet. Ridgeview was not just a school, it was a system. Caleb's father had money. His mother knew every teacher worth knowing. His friends were athletes, student council kids, children of people who wrote checks at fundraisers. Telling the truth about Caleb did not feel like telling the truth about one boy. It felt like telling the truth about a whole town that had made room for him. At lunch, Marcus did not go to the cafeteria. He and Eli sat in the library near the back windows, sharing a bag of chips and pretending to study. Eli kept looking toward the door. "Do you think he knows I sent it?" he asked. "Probably," Marcus said. "Do you think he is going to do something?" Marcus looked at him. "I think Caleb is used to people being afraid before he has to do anything." Eli nodded, then pulled his camera closer to his chest. "I hate this." Marcus gave him a tired smile. "Yeah, me too. I am not good at this kind of thing," Eli said. "I am good at filming old buildings and editing sad music under them. I did not sign up to be in a school drama." Marcus looked toward the rain sliding down the library windows. Nobody signs up for it. That was when Sienna Brooks appeared between the shelves. She was carrying a paperback novel and a coffee she had clearly bought somewhere off campus because Ridgeview coffee could not legally be called coffee. She looked around before she sat across from them. "I need to talk to you," she said. Eli looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at Sienna. She had been with Caleb since sophomore year, at least according to the pictures on social media. The homecoming photos, the football games, the beach trips, all of it. She was the kind of girl people assumed had it easy because she wore expensive clothes and never seemed rushed. But sitting there with both hands wrapped around her coffee cup, she looked like someone who had not known what to do for a long time. "If this is about telling me Caleb is not that bad," Marcus said, "you can save yourself a trip." Sienna shook her head. "I was not going to say that." There was a pause. Then she said, "He has done this before." Eli stopped moving. Marcus leaned back. Sienna swallowed. "Not the exact same thing, but close enough. Last year there was a kid named Noah Price. Quiet kid. Moved here from Tulsa. Caleb kept messing with him because Noah would not join the football team. Said he was weird, said he was hiding something, all that stupid stuff. One day Caleb took Noah's phone and threw it into the gym pool. Marcus watched her carefully. "Did anybody report it?" Sienna looked down. "Noah transferred 2 weeks later." "And you?" Marcus asked. Her face tightened. I stood there. It was not an excuse. Marcus could hear that in her voice. It was a confession. "Why are you telling me this now?" Sienna looked at him, and for the first time since he had met her, she did not look like Caleb Carter's girlfriend. She just looked tired. "Because I watched Friday happen, and I realized I've spent 2 years acting like silence made me better than him." She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. "I have messages, screenshots, things he said about Noah, things he said about Noah, things he said about you. He likes to text when he is angry because he thinks words disappear if you delete them." Eli glanced at Marcus. "They do not," he said quietly. Sienna almost smiled. Apparently not. Marcus did not take the phone right away. He thought about his mom in the laundromat, about not handing Caleb a version of himself that Caleb could use. This was bigger than revenge now. It had to be. "I am not going to post anything," Marcus said. Sienna nodded. "Good. Posting it will turn you into the villain by lunchtime." "I know," Marcus said, "but I will give it to Ms. Danner." Sienna took a breath, then slid the phone across the table. "That is what I hoped you would say." By the end of the day, Marcus had 3 witness statements, Eli's video, Sienna's screenshots, and one message from Trevor that read, "Can we talk somewhere nobody sees us?" Marcus almost ignored it. Trevor had laughed at the shoulder checks. Trevor had stood there in the cafeteria. Trevor had spent weeks being Caleb's shadow, because shadows did not have to take responsibility for what they followed. But then Marcus remembered something his grandfather used to say when he was little. A person can spend years doing the wrong thing, but the first honest thing they do still counts. So Marcus told Trevor to meet him behind the auditorium after school. The back of the auditorium was one of those forgotten corners every school had. Half-broken benches, old posters peeling off brick walls, a vending machine that had not worked since probably 2009. Trevor was already there when Marcus arrived. He looked like he had been standing in the cold too long. "You got like 5 minutes," Marcus said. Trevor nodded fast. "That is fair." He pulled his hands from his pockets. "I did not know what he was going to do Friday." Marcus said nothing. Trevor looked away. "Okay, that is not true. I knew he was going to do something. I just did not know it would be that bad." "You laughed," Marcus said. Trevor flinched. "Yeah, You called me scholarship boy. Yeah, you moved my backpack. Trevor shut his eyes for a second. Yeah. Marcus let the silence sit there. He did not need to yell. Trevor was doing enough damage to himself already. Finally, Trevor said, "My dad works for Caleb's dad." Marcus looked at him. What? Advanced development. Maintenance supervisor. Been there 12 years. Caleb knows it. Everybody knows it. Trevor laughed once, but there was no humor in it. You ever feel like your life is so small, somebody else can step on it without even noticing? Marcus did not answer right away. Yeah, he said finally. I know that feeling. Trevor looked at him, surprised. Then why are you not scared of him? Marcus leaned against the brick wall. Who said I am not? Trevor stared at him. Marcus shrugged. Being scared is not the same thing as letting somebody decide who you are. Trevor looked down at the ground. Then he pulled out his phone. I have a video too, he said. Not from Friday. From last month. Caleb shoved this kid Malik Sanders into a locker near the gym. Malik fell, hit his elbow, started bleeding. Caleb made everybody delete the videos, but I did not. Marcus took the phone, watched the clip, and felt something settle inside him. Not anger exactly, more like clarity. Caleb had spent years building his power one quiet moment at a time, counting on everybody else to help him bury the truth. Now the truth was coming back piece by piece, not because Marcus had threatened anyone, not because he had played some secret game, but because people were finally tired of carrying Caleb's fear for him. The next morning, Caleb tried a different approach. He caught Marcus near the east stairwell, where the cameras were visible but far enough away that most people did not hang around. He looked calmer than usual, which was worse somehow. So what do you want? Caleb asked. Marcus kept walking. Caleb moved in front of him. I am serious. Money? New clothes? You want me to say sorry in front of everybody? Fine, I will say sorry. Marcus stopped. You think this is about a hoodie? Caleb laughed under his breath. Everything has a price, man. That is probably what your dad taught you, Marcus said. Caleb's smile disappeared. Do not talk about my dad. Then do not talk like him. Caleb took a step closer. You do not know anything about my dad. Marcus looked at him, really looked at him. Under the anger, under the jacket, under the whole loud, confident act, Caleb looked exhausted. Not innocent, not misunderstood, just exhausted. Maybe I do not, Marcus said. But I know you keep acting like people owe you respect because you are scared they will see how little you have without it. Caleb's face went hard. You think you have me figured out? No, Marcus said. I think you have spent your whole life trying to make sure nobody figures you out. That hit harder than Marcus expected. Caleb looked away for half a second, and in that half second, the hallway did not belong to him anymore. Then he shoved Marcus into the wall. It was not hard enough to hurt much, but it was loud enough that two students nearby stopped. Caleb caught himself immediately, like he had almost stepped off a cliff. Marcus did not shove back. He just stood there, his shoulder against the lockers, looking at Caleb with the same calm expression he had worn in the cafeteria. There it is, Marcus said quietly. That is what you do when words do not work. Caleb backed up. The two students had their phones out now. Caleb saw them. His face changed. He turned and walked away without saying another word. By noon, Principal Harwood had called both Marcus and Caleb to the office. This time, the room was fuller. Ms. Danner was there. So was the school counselor, Coach Reynolds, and Caleb's father, Frank Vance, sitting in a dark suit that looked like it had never seen a wrinkle in its life. He did not greet Marcus when he came in. He barely looked at Caleb. Caleb stood near the wall, arms folded, trying to look bored, but Marcus could see the tremor in his knee. Principal Harwood spoke first. We have reviewed several reports involving Caleb Carter, he said. We have video evidence, witness statements, and messages that indicate a repeated pattern of harassment and intimidation. Frank Vance leaned forward. Repeated pattern is a strong phrase for teenage behavior. Miss Danner looked at him over her glasses. It is a precise phrase, Mr. Vance. The room got quiet. Frank Vance looked at Caleb then, and something passed between them. It was not concern, it was disappointment, sharp and cold. Is this true? He asked. Caleb did not answer. I asked you a question. Caleb finally said. They're making it sound worse than it was. Marcus almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was exactly what people like Caleb always said, when their own behavior finally stood in daylight. Ms. Danner opened the folder. The school will be holding a formal disciplinary hearing on Friday. Caleb will be suspended from football activities until the hearing is complete. We will also be reviewing whether additional action is necessary. Caleb looked up fast. You cannot suspend me from playoffs. Coach Reynolds shifted in his chair. You should have thought about that before you made a cafeteria full of students watch you humiliate somebody. Caleb stared at him, shocked. Coach Reynolds had been one of the adults Caleb thought belonged to him. Frank Vance stood. We will have our attorney review this. Principal Harwood nodded. You are welcome to do that. Frank turned toward Caleb. Get in the car. Caleb did not move. His eyes found Marcus across the room. For the first time, there was no smirk there, no sarcasm, no fake confidence, just fear. Not fear of getting hit, not fear of Marcus, fear of what happened when the story he had told about himself finally stopped working. Marcus held his gaze for a second, then looked away. He had not won anything yet, not really. Friday was still coming, and Marcus knew Belhaven well enough to understand that people with money did not just disappear because the truth showed up. But as he stepped out of the office, Eli caught up with him in the hallway, breathing hard like he had run all the way from class. They put the hearing on the school calendar, Eli said. Marcus stopped. What? Eli held up his phone. Someone leaked it. Everybody knows. Marcus looked at the screen. The post was already spreading through Ridgeview faster than anything honest ever seemed to spread. Caleb Carter disciplinary hearing Friday. Students were commenting, guessing, choosing sides before they even knew the facts. Marcus felt his stomach drop. This was exactly what he had not wanted. Truth was one thing. A public feeding frenzy was another. And somewhere on the other side of the building, Caleb Carter was probably looking at the same post, realizing that by Friday the whole school would be watching him the way they had watched Marcus in the cafeteria. Only this time, there would be no tray to flip, no joke to hide behind, and no easy way to make the room look away. Friday came with the kind of nervous energy Ridgeview High usually saved for playoff games. People were pretending to care about algebra and lunch menus and weekend plans, but every hallway conversation bent back toward the same thing. Caleb Carter, the hearing, the video, the screenshots. The question nobody could stop asking, was he finally going to face consequences, or was Belhaven going to do what Belhaven always did and find a way to protect one of its favorite sons? Marcus felt the eyes on him the second he walked through the front doors. Not cruel exactly, not the way they had been when he first arrived, but heavy, curious, hungry for an ending, and he hated that part of it. He had not wanted to become a symbol. He had not wanted teachers to look at him with that careful expression people wore when they were trying to decide whether you were okay, and he definitely had not wanted half the school to treat a disciplinary hearing like it was a championship game. All he wanted was for somebody to say what happened was wrong and mean it, not quietly, not behind closed doors where it could be softened into a misunderstanding, but clearly enough that the next kid who got shoved into a locker, laughed at in a cafeteria, or made to feel like they did not belong, would know they were not crazy for being hurt. Ely found him by the vending machines before first period, holding 2 bottles of orange juice like he had no idea what else to do with his hands. I got you one, he said, then looked at the label. Actually, I got you the kind with pulp, which is probably a terrible choice if you hate pulp, but it was the only cold one left. Marcus took it and smiled. You are doing fine, man. Eli nodded, though he did not look convinced. There are people saying you set Caleb up. Marcus twisted the cap off the bottle. People say a lot of things when they do not want to admit they watched something happen and stayed quiet. Eli looked down the hallway. Do you think he is going to get kicked out? I do not know, Marcus said. And honestly, that is not really my call. Across the building, Caleb was sitting alone in the locker room, long before practice was supposed to start, even though he was not allowed to practice anymore. Coach Reynolds had taken his captain patch 2 days earlier. Not with a speech or some dramatic announcement, just a quiet knock on the office door and a simple instruction to hand it over. Caleb had stared at that patch in his palm for a long time, the little gold sewn into blue fabric, and then he had placed it on Coach Reynolds' desk without saying a word. That was the first thing he had lost that actually scared him. Not because it was expensive, or because his father could replace it, but because he had built so much of himself around being the guy everybody followed. Without the patch, without the teammates slapping his back in the hall, without the constant little signs that told him he mattered, Caleb did not seem to know where to put his hands or how to stand still. Sienna found him there after second period. She stood in the doorway for a moment, arms crossed, letting the silence stretch out between them. Caleb did not look up. You here to tell me I deserve it? He asked. Sienna walked over and sat 2 lockers away from him. Do you think you deserve it? Caleb gave a bitter laugh. You tell me. She looked at him carefully. I think you spent a long time making people feel small because you were terrified of what would happen if you were not the biggest person in the room. Caleb finally looked at her. You do not know anything about me. I know you got meaner every time your dad was disappointed in you, she said. I know you would act like a jerk after dinner parties at your house, especially when he talked about you like you were some investment he was waiting to pay off. I know you call people weak when you were the one who could not handle anybody saying no to you. Caleb's face tightened. You think that makes me a monster? Sienna shook her head. No, I think it makes you responsible. He looked away again, but this time he did not have a comeback. Sienna stood up slowly. That is the thing nobody ever told you, Caleb. Being hurt does not give you permission to hurt everybody else. The hearing was held in the small conference room behind the main office, the one with fake plants in the corner and old plaques hanging on the wall. And there was no audience, no packed hallway, no students pressing their faces against the glass hoping to catch a glimpse of somebody getting destroyed. Principal Harwood had made that clear from the beginning. This was not entertainment. This was not a trial on television. It was a school hearing, and it was about deciding whether Ridgeview was going to keep pretending it did not see what had been happening in its own hallways. Marcus sat on one side of the table with his mom beside him, still in her work uniform because she had come straight from the care center without stopping to change. Across from them sat Caleb, his father Frank Vance, and a lawyer Marcus had never seen before, a smooth-looking woman with a leather folder and a voice so calm it made every sentence sound expensive. Miss Paled. Danner was there, Coach Reynolds was there, the school counselor was there, and on a screen near the end of the table sat the evidence. Eli's video paused on the exact second before the tray went over. Nobody spoke for a while. Then Principal Harwood looked at Marcus. Mr. Harwood looked at Marcus. Hail, he said. You may begin whenever you are ready. Marcus had thought about this moment all week. He had imagined saying something sharp, something that would make Caleb feel every word the way Marcus had felt, every laugh in that cafeteria. But when he looked across the table and saw Caleb sitting there with his shoulders stiff and his eyes fixed on the floor, he realized he did not want revenge nearly as much as he wanted honesty. So he took a breath and said, I did not come here because of one lunch tray. Caleb looked up at that. Marcus kept going. I came here because that tray was just the part everybody saw. Before that, there were the shoulder checks, the comments, my bag getting thrown in a bathroom, people calling me things under their breath, and everybody acting like I was supposed to laugh it off because that was easier than admitting it was wrong. Caleb did not do all of it alone, but he started it, and everybody else knew they were safer if they stood on his side. The room stayed quiet. Frank Vance leaned back in his chair, his mouth pressed into a thin line. Marcus looked at him for a second, then back at Caleb. I do not need Caleb to get ruined. I do not need him to lose everything just so I can feel better. But I do need this school to stop acting like some kids are untouchable because their parents have money, or because they are good at football, or because everybody is afraid of making things awkward. That was when the lawyer spoke. Mr. Meganum. Hale, nobody here is suggesting that your concerns are not valid, but we should be careful about making broad claims against the school community. Marcus's mom shifted beside him, but Marcus held up his hand a little, letting her know he was okay. Then he looked at the lawyer and said, Ma'am, I am not making a broad claim. I am talking about a hallway full of people who watched what happened and looked away. That is not broad. That is specific. Ms. Danner lowered her eyes for a moment, like she was thinking about every time she had walked through that same hallway and missed something. Then Eli came in. He was pale enough that Marcus thought he might turn around and leave, but he sat down, placed his camera bag by his feet, and told the truth anyway. He talked about recording the cafeteria incident, about being afraid to report it, about seeing Marcus treated differently since the first week he arrived, and about how he had almost deleted the video because he did not want Caleb or his friends coming after him. But then I thought about Noah, Eli said, his voice shaking on the name. I did not know Noah very well, but I remember him leaving. Everybody acted like he was just another kid who transferred, but he was not. He left because nobody did anything. Sienna came next. She did not sit beside Caleb. She sat on the other side of the room, closer to Marcus and Eli, and when she talked about Noah Price, she did not try to make herself look better. She admitted she had stood by while Caleb humiliated people, that she had laughed once or twice when she should have said something, that she had convinced herself being quiet was the same as being innocent. It is not, she said, looking straight at Caleb. Being quiet is still a choice. Then Trevor walked in. Marcus had not expected him to show, Trevor's father had told him not to get involved, not because he thought Caleb was right, but because Frank Vance had the kind of power that made grown men worry about mortgage payments and job security. Still, Trevor came. He carried his phone in both hands, and when he showed the video of Malik Sanders getting shoved into the locker by the gym, the room changed. There was no way to call it a misunderstanding anymore. No way to call it boys being boys. Caleb watched the video without blinking, and for the first time all morning, his face did not look angry. It looked empty. Frank Vance stood up so suddenly his chair scraped against the floor. "This is ridiculous," he said. "We are talking about teenagers. These are childish incidents that have been inflated because my son is a visible student." Coach Reynolds looked at him. "No, Frank, we are talking about a pattern." Frank turned toward him. "You coached this boy for 3 years. You know he is not some criminal." Coach Reynolds' face hardened. "I coached him for 3 years, and that is exactly why I should have seen it sooner." The words landed hard. Caleb looked at his coach, and something in his expression broke just a little. Frank saw it too, but instead of softening, he got colder. "Fine," he said. "What do you people want? A public apology? A suspension? You want to make an example out of him?" Marcus looked at him then, really looked at him, and suddenly he understood something that made the whole situation sadder than he expected. Caleb had learned this somewhere. Not every detail, not every cruel joke, but the belief that power meant never admitting fault, never letting anybody see you lose, never apologizing unless it bought you something back. Marcus thought about Caleb asking him in the stairwell what he wanted, like every problem had a price tag. Then Caleb surprised everyone. He stood up. His hands were shaking, just barely, but they were shaking. "Stop," he said. Frank looked at him. "Sit down." Caleb swallowed. No. The room went quiet again. Caleb stared at the table for a moment, then looked at Marcus. "He is right." Frank's face went still. Caleb kept going, his voice rough and low. "I did it. I did all of it. The tray, the locker, the comments, most of it anyway. I knew people would laugh because they always laugh when I start something. I knew teachers would not notice if I was careful, and I thought it made me important." He looked at his father now, and the fear in his eyes was different than it had been all week. This was not fear of punishment. This was fear of being honest in front of the one person who had taught him. Honesty was weakness. "I thought if people were scared of me, it meant I was not nothing." Frank opened his mouth, but Caleb raised his hand. "No, you asked me if it was true. It is true." Nobody moved. Nobody even seemed to breathe. Principal Harwood folded his hands on the table and spoke calmly. "Caleb, the school has reviewed the evidence and the statements. You will be suspended for 10 school days. You will be removed from the football team for the remainder of the season, including playoffs. You will complete a restorative accountability program with the counselor, and you will participate in supervised service hours at the Bellhaven Youth Center. We will also provide written apologies to the students affected. But those apologies will not require anyone to forgive you or respond to you." Caleb nodded once. His face had gone pale, but he nodded. Frank Vance looked like he was about to argue again, then he looked at his son and stopped. Maybe for the first time in Caleb's life, there was nothing money could fix without making everything worse. When the hearing ended, the hallway outside was mostly empty. Principal Harwood had arranged it that way. But news still moved fast in a school, and by the time Marcus walked toward the exit with his mom, he could feel people watching from classroom doors. Some looked proud of him, some looked guilty, some looked uncomfortable because the truth had made the place feel less clean than they wanted it to be. Marcus hated the attention, but his mom squeezed his shoulder and said, "You did good." He looked at her. "I do not feel good." She nodded. Doing the right thing does not always feel good. Sometimes it just feels heavy. Outside, the rain had started again, soft at first, then steady enough to make the sidewalk shine. Marcus was halfway across the parking lot when he heard somebody call his name. He turned and saw Caleb standing under the awning near the gym doors alone. No football jacket, no friends, no father. Just Caleb, hands in his pockets, looking like he had been trying to decide whether to come over for a while. Marcus's mom looked at him, silently asking if he wanted her to stay. He nodded once. She stepped a few feet away but did not leave. Caleb approached slowly. He stopped far enough away that Marcus could have walked off if he wanted to. "I am not asking you to forgive me," Caleb said. Marcus said nothing. Caleb looked down at the wet pavement. "I do not think I deserve that right now. Maybe I never do." His voice cracked a little on the last word, and he cleared his throat. "I just wanted to say, I am sorry." Not because the school made me, not because I got caught. I am sorry, because I knew I was making you feel like you did not belong here, and I did it anyway." Marcus watched him. He had imagined this apology 100 different ways, most of them satisfying, some of them cruel. But standing there in the rain, seeing Caleb without the crowd, without the team, without the loud voice and the smirk, Marcus realized forgiveness was not a switch somebody could flip just because another person finally said the words. "I hear you," Marcus said. Caleb nodded, waiting. Marcus took a breath. "But hearing you is not the same as being okay. You do not get to apologize and decide that I am done being angry." Caleb looked up, and for a second he seemed relieved to hear it. "I know," he said. "You should be angry." Marcus shook his head. "I was angry. I still am, sometimes, but I am not going to spend my whole life carrying what you did. That part is yours." Caleb looked like he'd been hit, but Marcus had not raised his voice once. Then Marcus added, "What you do next is up to you. You can act like this was something people did to you, or you can admit it was something you did and stop being that guy." Caleb nodded slowly. "I do not know how." Marcus looked toward the football field behind the gym, the empty bleachers dark against the gray sky. "Then learn." The next few weeks were not neat or easy. Caleb did not suddenly become funny and kind and everybody's favorite redemption story. Some students said his suspension was not enough. Others said he had lost too much already. People argued in group chats, at lunch tables, in the comments under anonymous school posts. There were kids who said Marcus should have pushed harder for Caleb to be expelled. And there were adults who said the school had overreacted, because adults like to call consequences overreacted when the consequences happened to somebody they knew. But Marcus never asked anyone to defend him. He went back to class, helped Eli finish his short film about old Bellhaven buildings, and started sitting with a few more people at lunch. Eli joined them. Sienna joined once or twice. Trevor joined too. Awkward at first, then less awkward when Marcus made it clear that pretending nothing had happened was not going to work, but trying to do better might. Caleb spent his afternoons at the Bellhaven Youth Center, stacking chairs, cleaning art supplies, helping little kids with homework while the staff kept a close eye on him. One afternoon, Marcus stopped by to pick up Eli, who had volunteered to film a community event there, and he saw Caleb sitting at a table with a boy who could not have been older than 8. The kid was upset because another boy had called him stupid during a basketball game. Caleb did not give him some big speech. He just sat there and said, "That does not make you stupid. It makes him a kid who does not know how to handle losing." Marcus watched from the hallway for a second. Caleb looked up and saw him. Neither of them smiled. Neither of them waved. But Caleb did not look away. That was something. Maybe not enough, maybe never enough for everyone, but something. Months later, Ridgeview still remembered the cafeteria, the hearing, the rain outside the gym, all of it. Marcus was no longer the new kid people whispered about, and Caleb was no longer the guy who could walk through a hallway and make everybody move. The school had changed a little, not perfectly, not magically, but enough that when another student got shoved near the science wing one day, 3 people stepped in before it became a joke. Marcus saw that happen from across the hall, and he did not say anything. He just kept walking, because sometimes the biggest change is not a speech or a punishment or a dramatic ending. Sometimes it is one person refusing to look away. So tell me this, do you think Marcus handled Caleb the right way? Should Caleb have been expelled and left to deal with the consequences alone? Or was being forced to face the people he hurt and do the work to change a stronger kind of justice? Drop your thoughts in the comments, share this story with someone who believes silence is harmless, and subscribe for more stories where the truth finally catches up with the people who thought they could outrun it.